Hey kids, this is Mrs. Sweeney, and I'm going to refresh you on what the rule of thirds is. And you may remember the elements of art and the principles of design, some charts that I provided to you. That just tells you as an artist what kind of tools and basic parts of an artwork that you can work with. And then the principles of design are like guidelines and rules where you can like arrange them and kind of have like a strategy to make your artwork more successful. And so I'm going to set these aside because the rule of thirds is kind of pinpointing the principle of design of like using balance and composition. And a composition just means you're composing as a designer, you're arranging things. It's like a musician would arrange notes on a staff. You would be arranging those basic elements like shapes. Here's a shape. Lines, value, it means darks and lights, all kinds of elements. But when you're composing, if you use the rule of thirds, it's not like lines or grids you're going to draw on your drawing, or when you take a photograph, you might notice in your camera, you might have a grid or rule of thirds. But it's really more like an imaginary type of strategy on how to arrange your shapes and elements within a composition to make it more interesting and more natural looking. It actually is, you have to plan it out a little more, but you get the effect of it being automatically more interesting. So a lot of times things won't be dead center like you would expect, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you notice that on this chart that you see, that I gave you, it's like the space has been divided into thirds with a couple of horizontals coming across and then a couple of verticals cutting through. And just as an artist in your head, be really aware as you're arranging and composing your shapes within your picture that if you can have your main lines, let's say there's a horizon, either a low horizon or a high horizon. So here you would say perhaps this skateboarding wall could be a horizon or land meets sky, but you have it kind of falling upon this lower third section. So we have lots of sky, just a little bit of lower area, and you have the skateboarder off center falling upon this right hand area. And notice I call these intersections of the lines hot spots, where that if you have some of your main shapes falling upon them, is automatically more interesting. And of course diagonals show a lot of movement, so that's always helpful too. So this is a sample I showed you on the PDF file. Let's see. And of course this can be turned, you can have it turned more horizontally, landscape style too. So I'm going to leave this here and I'll show you a few samples. Some of these are images just pulled from my calendars. You have a low horizon or land meets sky, so it automatically kind of falls upon that lower third. And then you have your focal point or main object that you're kind of zooming in on here that catches your eye. You have a child turned away, so you don't even have to see the face. I mean, it's more interesting this way. And you have some interesting textures, details. But notice how she would fall upon this intersection, kind of a hot spot. She's kind of like leaning into the picture a little bit. And we have another one with a high horizon line, okay, kind of a bird's eye view. And we have our subject going into the picture, so your eye kind of follows in. So this is all composing and arranging and really thinking about not just always doing a mug shot or the obvious centering. And then we have another one. This one doesn't have a horizon, but you may notice that our main subject falls upon, off center, more of an informal balance, yet more natural, okay? And we have our subject kind of centered, but you see that this kind of catches your eye, lots of beautiful textures. And then I have a photograph took a long time ago with a low horizon, kind of real contrasty darks against lights to make it more dramatic. And instead of centering a tree, just kind of have them naturally repeating, making a pattern. And then here's an old photo from a long time ago. Happens to be me a long time ago, but a bit off center. Notice face turned looking into the picture, which you follow that gaze. So you're bringing back in, and even the shadows of the columns become part of the interesting composition. High horizon, kind of like the skyline there. So, you know, thought out. And I'm asking that you find an image yourself that you think falls under the rule of thirds. I don't care if you're taking a screenshot of an image you search and find, or if you have an old artwork that follows this kind of guideline for composition. Remember, you would never draw it, it's just like in your head. Like when you're taking a photograph, you just kind of think, what would be a great angle, what's more interesting? You could go to your backyard and take a photo of you know, just kind of keep tilting your camera, moving it back and forth, looking for new arrangements and compositions. You could just take a photo like of a street scene and kind of decide if you want to raise or lower the horizon, you know, keep it interesting. Now, you probably won't be able to see the whole thing. This is a painting that I have above my desk at school, and it also, I'll probably have to move around so you see parts of it, but you don't really have any subject that's dead center. You have some interesting subjects in the foreground coming forward at you. Bud is the main focal point, or that draws your eye, but he is coming into my painting, and I have a larger course in the foreground, and I have a horizon. So the horizon's fairly high, so I have lots of land to work with. There's a little bit of sky, but you can see that it's composed, even the little dog right here. I forget the little dog's name, but he's looking into the picture kind of towards my subject. Even his other dog is looking at our subject. So as an artist, you would always consider how you're arranging your subjects to kind of control how your audience is looking at your composition. And so it's kind of a strategy. Now, a few of you got confused and you thought that the rule of thirds, it is a grid, but it's not this type of grid. Sometimes we use grids to lay over an image and move it around to find a new composition. You may notice that this old calendar has been, the grid has been laid on top of it. Not the rule of thirds necessarily, although it has been, it's going to be translated using the rule of thirds, but this is just a regular grid where you would blow it up, draw like just within each square, but draw it larger. It's an old-fashioned, very tried and true technique of enlarging, like for murals perhaps, or this student had taken this imagery and just kind of decided to blow it up using the grid pattern. But that's an enlargement grid. Ours is the rule of thirds, okay? So we'll set that aside, and I hope you have fun with that. Find an image that you can show us in our discussion, and let's see what everybody comes up with. Thanks.